Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mang. Welcome back to Roll Mangging for our Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign. Alright, so pretty exhilarating session this time, let me tell you. Not quite as perhaps epic as Ovum trying to take on the Kraken by himself, but it's gonna be damn hard to find something like that at level 2. So, what are you gonna do? But, okay. So, let me go back to where... Okay, so Schmendrick the Magician had just joined the party. And Schmendrick, if you remember, was a rogue pretending to be a sorcerer, although nobody believed it. Really, Schmendrick is just kind of insane. Like, it went beyond just, I wish I had power, to just kind of insanity, really. Those are the best characters. Okay. So, he had just joined up with Seneth and Finn, and they had delivered the letter. They went back to Roella's mansion, and they spent the night there. And so, Mert couldn't make this session, so Finn was out the whole time. He was just kind of traveling along with us like a zombie or something. So not much different than what Mert usually does. And so we get up, and a servant comes to us and says, breakfast is being served downstairs, and okay. And apparently this mansion had a room just for serving breakfast. Which is kind of like, you know, where I go to eat brunch, I guess. You know, that's what it's there for. But, yeah, so that was pretty nice, and so... I was introduced to the Lord and Lady of the Manor, and they were informed that I was a great mage, and they wanted to see a performance before breakfast. And I was like, well, not at my full strength, because I have not eaten yet, but I can conjure up something. And so I think I rolled pretty damn highly. Yeah, I rolled pretty well, and so I made an accordion appear out of nowhere. They were like, do you play? And I'm like, of course I do. And so they're like, well, perhaps that can wait till after you've eaten. And so we had breakfast. There was some chit-chat, some chitting and some chatting, stuff like that, about, you know, what was going on. And Roella was informed by her father that he'd arranged for another companion to join in our travels, to accompany us. And this is her old teacher, her old tutor, Archibald Senix. And she seemed kind of disgruntled with this, because she didn't think she needed any more assistance than she had, but she couldn't really argue too much. And so we sat around there for a while. Finally, Mr. Senix showed up, and this guy was pretty damn old. Had a beard to, like, the floor. So, glorious big beard. And also, he was pretty much completely senile. He had Alzheimer's. He had something going on. He couldn't remember how he got here, and he just kind of was like an old version of Golk, basically. But more senile. Glorious. But he was a great mage, apparently, so alright. And so we pretty much were just like, we're going to head out right away. And Seneth, I'm almost certain Seneth had some other plans. Seneth is, you know, a thief, I guess, or whatever he would call himself, behind closed doors. He likes money. So I'm thinking he was probably going to try and arrange a robbery of that other mansion that we went into. He was going to try and steal something there. And, I think what was going to happen was he was going to do it during the week when we were not playing. He was going to try and arrange something with Ren to do it privately so he didn't take up, you know, the group's time, which is very considerate of him, because if it were me, I'd just be like, yeah, I'm going to do this right now. I just thought of this 10 seconds ago. I'm going to do it. You're all just going to sit here and wait. But I'm an asshole, and he's not, so I'm glad. That's good. So he just kind of let it go, and we got in the cart and we started our trip. Oh, I did try and play the accordion before I left, and I rolled like a 9 or a 10. So I played like, you know, the most basic accordion ever. And they were like, have you been studying long? And I'm like, I started last night. Oh, that's impressive. Yeah. And, okay, so we get into the cart, we start moving through town, and we get stopped before we leave, because there's apparently some crowd gathered. And so we get out, you know, of course Schmendrick's like, I'm an archmage, I will clear this up. And we go and we talk to the guards, and basically we find out that some crazy guy showed up in town, claiming that some giant creature came out of the sea. And he thought he was going to attack and kill everybody. It was humongous, and it was terrible, it was terrifying, blah, blah, blah. And so Seneth and Roella quickly linked this to, you know, Ovum and all that stuff. And so, you know, we talked for a little while, but eventually we arranged for us to go with a group of like 10 guards to go to the north and check out what's going on. So we go to the north, and we find this creature. And none of us can know what it is. We all fail our checks, but of course Schmendrick is not going to fail his check. So he just calls it he's like, yes, this legendary creature, it's a glibbergee, or something like that. He said something like that. That's like one of my favorite things to do, is you fail a check, and then you just bullshit it anyways. It's something rarely players do. But it's just like, just because you fail something, just because you don't know something, your character might not care that he doesn't know it, because he still needs to keep up appearances, because people do that in real life. People will pretend to know something that they have no idea what they're talking about. So he's just like, yes, this is a glibbergee. I know it. I fought it many years ago in my youth. And they never asked how old Schmendrick was. On his paper, on the sheet, he's like 24 or something like. He's very young, especially for a half-elf. And so obviously he's just bullshitting that he's been around for many, many years. But if they would have asked, he'd just be like, well, I've cast magic to keep my youthful appearance or some bullshit like that. But, and they all tried. I said, glibbergee is the orcish word for big and scary. And nobody speaks orc. I picked the most obscure language and nobody would pick. So I was like, yes, orc. That's a funny moment. Because none of them spoke orc, so they couldn't call me out because they didn't know what this was. So they wanted desperately to just call me out on my bullshit, but nope. And so we go over to it, and it's dead. It has a giant hole through it. And sitting next to it on a box is a dwarf named Golk. And so we chit-chat with Golk, and he claims to not remember anything. He doesn't know how this died, but he knows that Zeratul is still sleeping in the ship, which is just floating offshore perfectly intact, and Ovum didn't quite make it. But he doesn't know what else happened. I mean, obviously he's bullshitting. Schmendrick tried to, like, suck the info out of his head, but it was futile. It was futile. So, yeah. So Roella swam out to the ship to check on Zeratul. Found him snoozing in his bed. She woke him up, and so Ziggy finally rejoined us. And they talked for a short while. Then they got into a rowboat and came back, and we asked him about the Kraken, the glibbergee, and well, for one, he rolled his nature check to see if he knew what it was, and he rolled well. He's like, yeah, you know this is a Kraken. And so he said that. He's like, right, the Kraken. I repeated at some point. I was like, yes, the rough translation from the Orcish word Gleebergee. And he didn't speak Orcish either, so he just had to accept it. So when in doubt, when you're trying to bullshit, pick Orc. Nobody speaks it. Until that one moment when your DM's like, yeah, fuck you. Anyways, he then claims that he put the giant hole in the Kraken and then passed out from exhaustion. That's what he claims. And Golk says that sounds plausible. And so there's just so much bullshitting going on just amidst this group. It was beautiful. It was great. I'm talking about Gleebergees, and I'm an archmage. Ziggy is telling that he put a big hole through the Kraken. Golk's pretending not to know anything. And so we decide that we should just take the ship at this point. Because there's no reason to go through the mountains. Because that's just unnecessary. The faster route is through the sea. The safer route is through the sea. And now, the sea creature is dead. So that was the only obstacle. So yeah, we're just going to take this perfect boat and go through the sea route. But Senix wandered off at some point because he's just an old man. And Roella found him sitting on the ground somewhere just naked. And meanwhile, Golk's like, Schmendrick, you want to see a magic trick? I'm like, sure. And so he reaches behind, he pulls a coin out from behind my ear. And I'm like, I'm going to do the same. And so I roll, and I pull a coin out from behind his ear. And he's just like, And so I'm like, And Golk's like, you must be powerful. And I'm like, you as well. We have things to discuss later. And so basically, we have in our group either pretending to be or actually are 5 mages, or 5 spellcasters. Between Golk, technically, I don't know the extent of... Golk has to be some sort of powerful, because he killed the Kraken. The Senix is pretty damn powerful. Roella... Zeratul, and then you have Schmendrick, who's not powerful at all. And so we took the rowboat, we went over to the ship, and I think somebody was like, does anybody know how to sail a ship? I'm like, absolutely I do! Just bullshit everything, it's the funnest. The most fun. So I got up there, and I had to roll my intelligence, and Schmendrick is not that bright, unfortunately. And so he rolls like a 9. And so he's just standing there, and he's like yanking on the wheel. And it doesn't go anywhere, and he's like, just prepping the engine, and getting everything lubricated and all that. I think we're ready to go, though. And so I roll again. I roll another 9. And so I start like pushing on the center of the wheel and stuff. And I'm like, this must be an older model of a ship I'm not familiar with. And so Senate rolls like an 18. He just jumps up there and we start going. Yeah. Being the most incompetent character in a group is kind of interesting. I'm not used to being Mert. Okay, so we started the trip. And... obviously, I wanted to discuss mage stuff with all these powerful mages. So we all sat at one table, which I dubbed the mage table, the cool table. So we're all sitting there, and Golk's like, Schmendrick, why don't you show us a trick of your power? And I'm like, absolutely. Watch this. And I roll a crit. So... apparently, I have a disguise kit on hand, of course. So I guess I quickly took that out and was like doing this for a little while, and then I look exactly like Golk. Boom! Take that! Which is pretty kind of rudimentary magic, really. It's not that impressive. But Gulk's like, wow! Watch this! And so he does that. And I'm not sure what Ren was really intending for him to do. But he flubbed. It sounded like he flubbed on his words. And so he said, okay, Gulk runs his hands over his face for a little while, and then he removes his face, and then I think he tried to correct it with hands, but we all laughed. He removes his face! And so we went with that. That was a very Nyarlathotep Gulk thing to do, though. Like, that was... Like, Nyarlathotep Gulk would remove your face, and you'd die, is what he would do. But no, Gulk was just... And it was just kind of featureless, which is really creepy. Like... Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, but he did it, and I was like, very impressive. And so then it went to Zeratul. He wanted to be impressive, so he made like an illusion on the table of like a star system using minor illusion, which I'm not sure if it's completely allowed, because the minor illusion can't create light. So, well, I guess he didn't need to use light. It wouldn't be as cool looking, but okay, fine. So we're all like, wow, you know, that's cool. So then it went to, we all pressured Roella to do something, and she was thinking. So we went back to Zeratul. He took a copper piece from Seneth, and he like pushed it in his hands for a little bit, and it came out as wood. Because he picked the transmutation school of magic as his specialty. And so he has the ability to transmute certain types of materials into certain types of materials. So he can turn something that's wood, iron, copper, sand, steel, maybe some combination of those, into another one of those materials. So he can turn copper into wood. He could turn wood into steel. But it's kind of limited because it only lasts an hour, and it takes like 10 minutes per cubic foot and stuff like that. And so he turned that copper piece into wood in 15 seconds, which the book doesn't say you can fraction it down like that. It just says 10 feet per cubic foot. It doesn't say, 1 minute per 1/10 cubic foot or whatever like that. So I don't know. I wasn't the DM, so it doesn't matter. But, okay, fine. He did that. I was like, okay, it's wooden. Then I went to Roella, and she said, Seneth, may I have your sword? He said, sure, and he drew his sword, and his sword was about to attack him. And so this was prior knowledge on her part. Apparently this was like an orb effect or a bag effect or something that inflicted something on somebody. I don't know what the exact effect was. But apparently Roella knew that the next time Seneth drew his sword, it would try and kill him. So she used that as part of her trick, rather than just informing the guy. That could have gone poorly. But then she used a spell, I don't know what. I don't know, I missed specifically whatever she did there. I was probably playing with my cat or something. I don't know why I missed it. But she did something and she got it under control and it stopped. And we were like, oh, very impressive. And then I was like, well, Mr. Senex needs to do something. So he's like, yes, perhaps I could do something. And so he cast a spell, and Ren rolled 1d215 or something like that. And so at first I was like, I was curious about that number. I was like, did he just make a special list of bag effects, or what is that? But no, I think what it was is he just made a list of every spell in 5th edition. And I think I'm not going to count them all, but there's plenty spells. Pages and pages of them. So I would not be shocked if it was 215. And so I guess how Senix works is he just, every time he wants to cast a spell, he doesn't really remember how to cast spells, sort of. So he just rolls on the whole list and hopes he gets what he needs, which is slim. So yeah, he's kind of like an old senile Gulk. And so knowing that, it's kind of terrifying. We're sitting around the mage table and he's casting a random spell. Because need I remind you, you can get some scary shit. Should I tell you what some shit he could cast? Meteor Swarm, Power Word Kill, Gate, Sunburst, Incendiary Cloud, Reverse Gravity. Yeah, pretty terrible stuff all around. I think he got Dancing Lights. Or something, some form of that. Because he made like 4 balls of light in front of him and he started juggling them. Like, the odds of getting something that mundane just to show, like, it was a perfect, like, show-off trick, and that's exactly what he needed. Because it's like, if he would have showed off, I don't know, Ray of Sickness, it'd be like, what the hell? Or, I don't know, Rope Trick would have been good. Shatter. Shape Change. Actually, Shape Change would have been pretty cool. Because he would have become the different creature. So if he turned into a bear, that'd be... Dude, Schmendrick would be applauding that shit. Anyways, so he did that, and then Schmendrick's like... Okay, that was impressive, but my final trick to end all this little contest is the greatest trick you will ever see in your lives. Nothing will ever top what you're about to see. Don't even try. Maybe you should close your eyes, because you'll never be able to witness something this amazing again. I just wanted to hype it so much so that fate was like, yes, roll a critical 1. But the fact that I wanted a critical 1, a critical fail, they're like, nah, that's not gonna happen. So I rolled like a 19. Like, it was really good, but not a crit, so it's just like, eh. It was pretty cool, though. I threw, like, a bunch of pyrotechnic smoke stuff and just this big cloud of smoke. And when it dissipated, there was a note in the chair that they all read that said, "Look behind you." And they all turned around, and I'm just like this. They were not very impressed, except for Gulk, who thought it was amazing. But I just kept on bowing. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. So that was pretty much that. Alright, the next night, we got boarded by pirates. Did the pirates know that this legendary sea creature was dead? Or were they just risking it? Because, as far as I knew, nobody was going out on these waters because of the fucking Kraken. And suddenly, Kraken dies. A night later, we get raided by pirates. I don't know, Ren. I don't know. Anyways. So we all scramble up onto deck. To combat these fiends. And so 5 of them... Well, Ziggy gets up there first, sees a guy swinging over, fires off a magic missile, pegs him right in the chest, and the guy just plummets into the water with a Wilhelm scream. So that was pretty good. But then he crit failed his initiative, so he got too excited about it, I guess. So there was 5 pirates on his ship. One of them was like a pirate captain, Captain Hook, something like that. And there was 4 of us. Odds are not in our favor. And so combat commenced. And Schmendrick's strategy for this fight was just burn everything. When I made him, I gave him 12 flasks of oil. Which is probably, if I go back through my D&D career, I would say the flask of oil is my most purchased item amongst all my characters. I bought that more than anything else. Because it's so useful. Fire is so useful. Love fire. There's some arsonist deep within me that I can just bring out into the open whenever I play Dungeons and Dragons. Or any RPG. It's just fire. It's effective and scary. And it spreads. Yeah, it's great. So he made like makeshift Molotov cocktails. And he said he was casting fireball, but he wanted to like launch them from his sleeves as if he was casting fireballs. And so I had to roll a sleight of hand every time I did it. I threw all 12 flasks throughout the whole night, rolling sleight of hand every single time. I think I only rolled lower than a 13 or 14, maybe twice. I rolled a lot of 18s for my sleight of hand and for the throws. I was rolling really well for most of it. So the first one I throw, first fireball, I crit. And so I crack the closest pirate in the face with a flask of oil. And so improvised weaponry is always just 1d4 or 1d6. I think you can make it. Or is that if you're... why am I looking this up? This isn't important at all. Yeah, well, most of the time it's 1d4 anyways. And so I rolled the 1d4 and I got a 1, which was really disappointing because I crit. And I thought about it a little later. I was like, shouldn't I have rolled double damage because I crit? But I didn't really care because he got on fire, which was the real goal. Fire everywhere. And so, yes. I threw many fireballs. Zenith went right into the mix of things, which is kind of bold for a rogue to kind of just be, up in your face. Roella was casting spells. Zeratul was casting spells. We have a mage-heavy group, despite, one of them not being a mage. And, yeah, so combat went pretty well. Halfway through the combat, I decided that, well, at this point, a large fire had been started. Okay, yeah, let me explain a little bit more. The pirate captain didn't like the look of Roella, apparently, so he threw 2 daggers at her, like V for Vendetta style, just... And, they both hit, and he rolled max damage for both. She was 1 health away from automatically dying from massive damage. She took 14 damage in 1 hit, which at level 2 is quite a bit. You're going down, unless you're Ovum. Or an equivalent. And but she almost died instantly. It was really big. So Zeratul flipped out, and he cast Burning Hands immediately, and that set the ship on fire and didn't really do that much damage. But so the ship was on fire. Halfway through, Schmendrick is like, okay, we got the fire going here, that'll take care of them, but we must eliminate their escape route. And so he starts chucking fireballs at the pirate ship. With probably the end result, without DM intervention, being both ships burned to the ground. But there was DM intervention, so it didn't really happen. We took care of all the pirates. The fire was going to burn straight through the middle of the ship and just burn it in half. But that didn't happen because Senix came out, and Roel's like, Senix, can you help us? And so he cast a spell. So this was a random spell. And, okay, here, I found an object that bears no resemblance to a weapon deals 1d4 damage. But it also says that a lot of times an improvised weapon An improvised weapon is similar to an actionable weapon, such as a table weapon. Table leg is the same as a club, which would do 1d4. But if I grab like a chef's knife, you could use the dagger. But if I grab like, I guess there aren't many. I don't know what. 1d4 was probably correct for that Molotov cocktail, but it's fine. What was I looking up? Oh, the spell that he cast, right. Yeah, you'll want to hear this one. Random out of everything. This is what he gets. He gets Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion. It's a 7th level spell. You conjure an extra-dimensional dwelling in range that lasts for the duration. You choose where its one entrance is located. You and any creature you designate where you cast a spell can enter the extra-dimensional dwelling as long as the portal remains open. Beyond the portal is a magnificent foyer with numerous chambers beyond. The atmosphere is clean, fresh, and warm. You can create any floor plan you like, blah, blah, blah. It contains sufficient food to serve a 9-course banquet for up to 100 people. A staff of 100 near-transparent servants attends all who enter. They are all completely obedient to your orders. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he created a extra-dimensional mansion and threw us all into it. Doesn't actually solve our problem, because this is just a different dimension. I think he may have misinterpreted right away that, we became, enveloped in the mansion, because they started, stamping out the fire, but it's a different dimension. There shouldn't be a fire there. But I kept chucking fireballs regardless, until finally Roella's like, "What are you doing?" I don't know. And so we decided then that we needed to find the exit to this place, because he didn't know where it was, to get back to the ship, because as soon as, the spell wears off, we just get dumped back where we were, which, if we don't get back to the ship, is going to be the middle of the ocean. And our ship is burning. So we got back there. They all, got buckets of water. They put out the fire. I used the rest of my flasks to burn up the pirate ship. Even though, I thought there were more pirates on it. I did. Apparently not. There's only, 5 pirates or something running the whole thing. Which is I've played Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It takes a lot of people to run a ship, so I don't know what was up with that. And, so that burned down. Our ship was a little worse for the wear, but seaworthy still. Roella's at, 1 health, because she rolled her first death saving throw and she crit, which was pretty impressive, so she went back up to 1 health. And everybody was like, let's get some rest. I go speak to Senex, because I saw him just make a mansion out of thin air, and I like it. Schmendrick is interested. So, he goes into Senex's room, and he's like, how would I be able to make a mansion appear like that? And he's just like, well, it takes years of learning and training and things like that. And Schmendrick's like, he doesn't have time for that. He wants power now. And so he's like, yeah, but I read in books that certain great mages made pacts with powerful beings to get their power. He's like, yes, warlocks, despicable, just terrible acts they did. I can't recommend that at all. And Schmendrick's like, but you know how? You could summon one. It's like, a demon? I'm like, yeah. It's like, no, I would never mess with that. That's too risky. Demons are dangerous and uncontrollable, blah, blah, blah. And Schmendrick's like, I also read that if you kill a great wizard, you claim his power. And I think Schmendrick was just bullshitting at that point, but he wanted to see what he said. He's like, yes, that could be true. Yeah. Well, you have a good night. And so Schmendrick went back to his room for a couple hours. And finally, sat up in bed and drew a dagger from his robes. He's like, yes. And so he crept over to Senex's room. And he snuck in, opened the door, snuck over to the bed, and was like, and stabbed down into his heart. And it went in. I stabbed him, and the snoring stopped. So I drew the dagger out, and I'm just like this, waiting for the power to enter me. And the snoring starts again. And the guy rolls over. And he wakes up, and he's like, oh, Schmendrick, what are you doing here? Oh, I don't feel too well. And I'm just like, ah! And so I roll again, and I critically fail. I'm like, shit. And so Ren just asked me what's the max damage my dagger does. And so I'm like, 11? It's like, okay. And so Senex rolls out of bed and he's like, well, what's going on? And we start our initiative. Oh, I'm like, I will have your power! And we roll initiative, and I get to go first. I'm like, from hell's heart I stab at thee! I critically fail again. So, he doesn't even have to, dodge. I'm just like, ah! And so now he's like, okay. Yeah! And so he casts a spell. Random spell out of 215. He could cast Meteor Swarm. He could cast Prestidigitation. We have no idea. Could cast anything. So he rolls. What does he get? Oh, I know you're just dying to hear what he cast. Oh, you just can't wait. Can't wait. So was I. I couldn't wait either. He cast Circle of Death. 6th level necromancy spell. And yes, it's as terrible as it sounds. I'll read the whole thing. A sphere of negative energy ripples out in a 60-foot radius sphere from a point within range. Each creature in that area must make a Constitution saving throw. A target takes 8d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. It's a circle of freaking death. Also, since apparently he's trained in the evocation tree or whatever, he gets a sculpt spell, which means that it doesn't do really AoE. It's just me, pretty much. So he cast it on pretty much just me, and I had to make a Constitution saving throw. Now this saving throw is, my con bonus and all that. It's a D20 roll, and the DC that I need to reach is his spell save DC. So for a second level mage, such as Ziggy's spell save DC is 13. You could potentially get that up to maybe 14 or 15, maybe even higher at this point. But, so it can be tough. But imagine somebody who can just cast 9th level spells at will. Their spell save DC is gotta be pretty ridiculous. Now, I know, it'd probably be 21 or something like that, I think is the theoretical max for 5th edition. Which is kind of weird, but yeah. Either way, pretty damn high. I'd have to crit. I didn't crit. So, I'm taking the full 8d6 necrotic damage, which ended up being 30 damage. So basically, to give you some visualization of what happened, picture the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they opened the Ark of the Covenant. That's kind of what happened to good old Schmendrick the Magician. I instantly died. Well, I don't know. Well, I died. I don't know if it was instant. There was probably a lot of screaming. Like the screaming that Wesley does in The Princess Bride when he's, you know, the machine gets cranked up to 50. Kind of picture that. So, yeah, everybody probably woke up from that. And, yeah, that's the end of Schmendrick the Magician. And that's where we ended the session. Okay, now, some of you people that have been watching Roll Mangging, Dungeons and Manggins, all from the start, you can probably realize that I played Schmendrick a little differently than I probably normally would. Yeah, Schmendrick was kind of suicidal. Schmendrick had the unfortunate existence of being a rebound character, I guess. I don't know what you'd call a middle character between two good characters that I care about. Because you can't just go from here's a solid character to here's a solid character. There's got to be some craziness in between. That's how I like to mix things up. So, Ovum was a good character. I cared about him. I knew he would die at some point. Because I have a bunch of good characters. I know they'll die at some point. But I still care about him. Ovum was one of those. And then my next one that I'll talk about in a few minutes, he's also a good character. So there had to be something in between, and that was Schmendrick. That would also be a character such as Dreadlord Phil or Mr. Underwood's, one of those characters, where it's just like, how do I kill this character in the funniest way? And, yeah, I know characters like that can be obnoxious to other players, and I apologize if it ended up being that way for any of the players in the campaign. Especially if any of you would have died. You know, I'm glad Ren at least intervened enough so that didn't happen, because I would feel pretty bad about that. Because I assume the other players care about their characters, because otherwise they would just do shit like I did. Or something like that. So if they would have died, I would have felt really bad. But other than that, I mean, if I was playing like a real serious character, not much would have really happened. I don't think otherwise. Like, we would have fought the combat. That would have been it. And then there may have been more combat. I don't know. Ren admitted that it wasn't the... he didn't have much time to plan this session. And that happens. It's fine. I'll make the session interesting if you need me to. And Schmendrick certainly did. So yeah, he'll be probably not missed at all. But he had some moments of glory. Like, even if I would have killed Senix, which never would have happened, he wouldn't have gotten any power. He would just be, you know, wanted for murder by the other people in his group. So, okay, that's the end of Schmendrick. Let's get back to the serious stuff. My next character will hopefully take me through the rest of the campaign, which is a big deal. And if you are attentive to these videos, you'll know that I've said the only kind of characters that have that kind of longevity are when I play smart. Yeah, so my next character is named Orion. Orion Canis. And Orion, that name may sound familiar, again, if you're attentive to all the videos that I do and stuff. Roll Mangging. Orion is basically Artemis in a campaign where I can't play Artemis. And I know that's kind of cheap. That's kind of like when a character dies and you're like, oh, well, he has a twin brother who's going to join the campaign now. That's basically where, like, I still want to play that character, you know? And, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that, but Orion's going to have his own little twist on it that'll be interesting. Okay, so again, I don't know how this character is going to be introduced. I don't know what all Ren has in store for him. I just know what I know about him. And Orion is, again, a young prodigal genius, as I like to play. He's a bit older than Artemis tends to be, though. He's going to be 15 at the start. And he comes from a wealthier family. They don't... Not really a family that, like, runs anything. Like, Artemis's family kind of ran things in Stanton and stuff. They didn't really run anything, but they were wealthy, and they paid for, all the education that young Orion could use. And, they knew Orion was obviously gifted and all that. And so he went through all the education that his city could offer at, a young age. And so he's been having kind of recurring visions or dreams or some flashes. He can't quite put his finger on it, and they're very vague. And they're vague enough to not give any information, but they're solid enough to intrigue him, where he feels like something's trying to tell him something. He doesn't think it's something wrong with himself, like he's having like a mental breakdown or something like that. He feels like maybe there's something more to this. And I'm thinking maybe, again, this is up to Ren, he can figure this all out, but I'm thinking maybe he sees like a flash in his head at one point of Artemis's symbol or something like that. Like that might be like the one thing that he was able to latch onto as a solid, piece of information, like that symbol. And so he's decided then, even though he's at the tender age of 15, there's not much, he could just stay in his city and be a scholar or something like that, be a teacher or, any profession he pretty much wanted as far as intellectual pursuits. He could handle all that. But perhaps there's something more out there. Perhaps these visions are telling him something. What is this symbol? Nobody in his city knew about this symbol. They couldn't tell him anything about it. He's got to go out there. He's got to find answers. And so that's really the key to Orion's character, is he's searching for answers. And, so far amongst our groups, amongst our characters, they've all kind of latched onto one thing that they're in search for. Seneth is in search of money. Ovum was in search of righteous indignation. Schmendrick was in search of power. Roella is in search of respect, I want to say. Zeratul, I don't know what he's in search of yet. That's kind of knowledge, perhaps? I'm not sure. Finn is in search of revenge. But Orion is going to be answers. He wants to know what is his place in this world. What are these visions? What is this symbol trying to tell him? All he wants information. Answers that he can't find in his own city. So he's out there. He's going to trek out there, just like young Artemis did, perhaps many, many years ago. I don't know. And his intellect can handle things for him. But of course, this is Dungeons and Dragons. And so, of course, if you remember the Artemis campaign, you remember all that, you know that Artemis was a scion. And, well, if you didn't know, Artemis was a scion. And the scion, I think, is probably my favorite class in 4th edition, I would say. I mean, I like vampire, but it's not versatile, and it's not a very good class. Scion really... Scion made me like casters when I didn't like spellcasting. So, yeah, I'm going to say Scion's my favorite class in 4th edition. I was just like, oh, I'm going to play a genius. Wizard, but what's this Scion stuff about? That sounds cool. And yeah, so it quickly became my favorite character and my favorite class. 5th edition does not have a scion. It will someday. Of course it will. It's Dungeons & Dragons. It'll have a scion, but it doesn't at this point. So yes, again, I could have played a wizard, could have played a warlock, sorcerer, blah, blah, blah. Ho-hum, ho-hum. No, I want to play a scion. And so I took it upon myself to make my own class. Not an easy feat, let me tell you. Easier in 5th edition than it is in 4th edition, yes. But still not simple. But this needed to happen. This is going to be my character for this campaign. He's got to be a scion. So I made him. And I didn't make them all from scratch. I culled some stuff from some other homebrew scions that people have tried to come up with for 5th edition and next. Most of it is kind of outdated at this point. And then I also borrowed some stuff from 4th edition that I really liked. And kind of threw it all together with my own stuff. And so I have the basics of a scion class. And so it's based on PowerPoints, which is how I think all scions have been based. Again, I don't remember when they were first introduced or anything, but yeah, PowerPoints. Here's the thing, because I would have loved to just straight adapt it from 4th edition. But 4th edition has at-wills, encounters, and dailies. It has that whole economy set up. At-wills, encounters, dailies. Every class gets it. 5th edition doesn't have that. You have your melee classes, your mundane classes that just kind of have their attacks and some special combat features and stuff like that. And then you have your spellcasters, which is all Vancian. You know, it's all spell slots. You have 3 spell slots of 1st level, 2 spell slots of 2nd level, so on and so forth. You can prepare this number of spells. You can cast this spell 3 times or 3 different spells. It all recovers at the end of a day. So, yeah, I mean, I could have done that for the Scion, but that doesn't involve PowerPoints. PowerPoints have to be in there. It's the staple of the class. So they kind of get somewhere in between. They get their PowerPoints, and they get more and more as they level up. And they get a selection of powers that they have to pick from. And unlike a wizard that gets to... Again, I don't know how sorcerers work. Yeah, I should probably check that, right? Because I thought sorcerers were a little different. Oh, maybe not. Well, I thought they were different, but apparently not. Okay, so spellcasters, you know, they have the whole list of first level spells. And they can potentially know any of them. Right? But every day, they have to pick a certain number to prepare for that day. And they can only cast those spells that day. But they can, the next day they can switch. So they can have Fireball, Sleep, and Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion or something. You would never pick those 3 spells for whatever. And then the next day you could have Chromatic Orb, Witch Bolt, and some other shit. Doesn't matter. You know, you can switch it up every day if you want. But for Scion, I went a little different route because they're not magic. It's not magic. It's different entirely. So for Scion, I said, here's a list of spells. There's no levels. You know, they're all just Scion powers. You can pick them all. You can pick any one of them from level 1. But once you pick one, that's it. You know it permanently. You can't change it. That's just in your freaking head. And so... they know then they have much less versatility, I guess, because a 20th level wizard has, you know, I guess 215 spell, not 215. I don't know how he got that. Did he go down the wizard list or did he just take every single spell? I don't know, because there are spells in the book that are not on the wizard spell list. Like, you know, all the cleric stuff, or the paladin stuff. So, I don't know how he took it. But the point is, 20th level wizard has access to a lot of different spells. A 20th level scion has access to, well, 10 powers is what I did. So, you just know those 10, that's all you can do. So, way less versatility, but this is a homebrew class, and I don't really care. I pretty much just designed it with just Orion in mind, for the most part. I did a couple different options and stuff like that, so, and I'm going to expand it, so there'll be, it'll be a solid class still, but anyways. Every single power costs a certain number of power points, as per, well, 4th edition didn't do that. 4th edition, you could just, you know, an at will is just at will, at will, at will. But in this one, everything costs power points, so you're gonna run out. In 4th edition, you could just keep casting stuff. You just couldn't augment it after a while. But you always had your at wills. You could always dimensional scramble. You could always mind thrust. Here, you can run out, and you will run out if you get into a lot of combat, or not combat, as I'll get to. And so everything costs power points, but then every single one is augmentable. And in 4th edition, everything had 2 augments. Everything was 2 augments, and it was all boring. Because only, well, for the most part, only combat spells were augmentable. And they always just increased damage, or increased targets, or, you know, increase some bonus or benefit or detriment, or, you know, something like that. Just increase, increase, increase. Which, I mean, yeah, that's what augment should do, but the point was, it was never that interesting. It was just like a trade-off. You know, do I want to spend power points to just make this do triple damage or something? So here, for this one, every spell has augments, regardless whether it's a combat spell or not combat. And the augment, it can be more, some of them have like 5 different augments or 6 different augments, something like that. There's a crazy number for some. But all of them have at least 2 or 3. And they're cool, for one. Like, it's not just do more damage or something like that. Some of them are really cool. And some of them can be stacked. So, like, one of the abilities, telekinetic grasp, you know, that's very psionic. You lift something with your mental powers. And the base power is like 1 power point, or something like that, and you can lift an object 30 pounds or heavier. But then there's an augment for plus 1 power point to, you can lift an object, you know, 10 pounds heavier. So up to 40 pounds. But you can use that augment as many times as you want. So you keep stacking that on, and suddenly you can lift a 100-pound object, 300-pound object, 800-pound object, 2,000-pound object, if you have enough power points. And that's really cool, because at level 1, you have like 7 power points. You just cannot, even if you spent all your power points on it, you couldn't lift something more than, you know, 90 pounds. But when you're a 20th level Scion, you have 200 power points, it's like, oh yeah, you know, it's cool. I really like that. And so some of them, you know, of course increase damage or increase range, stuff like that. Some of them, like one of the abilities that I put in there is Cloud Mind. And so this one, you use it on a single target within 50 feet, and you concentrate on that target, and they get to make a save. But if they fail, you are like completely invisible. Like, you erase your presence from their mind. Like, or something like that. Like, the light from your image enters into their eyes and is traveling its way to their brain, but you're like, no, you don't see shit. Like, it just blocks you out. And so you're just like, yeah, I'm just walking by. No big deal. It only works on you, so it doesn't really help the group too much, but it's cool as hell. Just thematically. I love it. And so that has an augment that's like mass Cloud Mind, and that does it like every creature within 50 feet of you, and you're just and that's the other cool thing is 4th edition made no discrimination, no mention whatsoever about like physical effects of what you're doing when you're manifesting these powers. And Ziggy and I got into a bunch of arguments over and over about what it looks like when I'm manifesting. Now, a wizard, when a wizard casts Burning Hands, whether it's a first level or a 20th level, he's doing this, and fire's coming out of his fingertips. That's always what happens. But a Scion, why should there be anything? Like, you've seen Professor X or something like that. He's just kind of sitting there most of the time. You have no idea. He's like, when he stops time or whatever in X2, he's just kind of rolling in his chair because it's just nothing. You have no idea he's doing any of this shit. That's why it's so cool. So I remember one time in the Artemis campaign when they were fighting the arena and I was sitting in the stands and I was like, why can't I just sit here and just dimensional scramble over and over? But Ziggy was like, no, you're doing something with your hands. They can see. And it's like, why? That's such bullshit. I wanted to fix that. So for this one, we have for pretty much every single power, there's a noticeable effect. But it's based on your level. Because if you've seen the X-Men movies, older Professor X, he can stop time. He's just rolling around. But low-level Professor X in like first class when he's younger, he actually like does this to manifest his powers. So he eventually was able to he didn't need that anymore, but when he was a low level, he still had to do that. So for something like Cloud Mind, or Mind Thrust, or Telekinetic Grasp. Telekinetic Grasp is a good one. When you're below level 4 as a Scion, you have to actually like do this. You have to manipulate it with your hands, physically like splay your fingers and stuff like that. Below level 7, you have to have 2 fingers on your temple. And you have to like focus on it like this. After level 7 though, you can just be like this. And so that's really cool. That's one of the coolest things about this homebrew class. Is just like, you can just kind of feel that growth just in how you handle yourself. That's really cool. So yeah, there's a bunch of abilities in there. Mind Thrust is, just kind of a basic damaging one, which only works on creatures with an intelligence greater than 4. Which I think is cool, because, again, in 4th edition, there was no mention of intelligence or anything like that. You could Mind Thrust a freaking tree if you wanted. It was like, how does this work? But, no, we fixed that. So, it has to have some sort of brain in order to be Mind Thrusted. So that's good. All the classic psionic powers are in there. The Telekinetic Grasp, you can use it on yourself. Yeah, so you can fly. You have to augment it. You have to get it up to your weight. Unfortunately, Orion, as a 15-year-old, doesn't weigh that much, so that's good. And it doesn't move too fast. It's like a fly speed of 10. So I'm not going to be using this to whip around the countryside. But I think, actually, there's an augment to increase that speed. Yeah, augments for everything. But no, if you just want to get up 50 feet into the air, well, cool stuff. I don't know why I did a cleric sound. Anyways, what else was there? Kind of blanking on my own list. There was like a telekinetic or a telepathic scream or something like that, which is like cone stuff, and it's just like ah. And there was one that decreased their attack bonus. Like it was like a distract or something like that. There was one that was like precognition, something like that, where you pick a target and they have disadvantage on all their attacks against you. Because you can always just like see like a second ahead of what they're doing. That was cool. Then for disciplines, level 3, you get to pick your path. So right now I only have 2. I have the telepath and the shaper. And I mean, shaper is not really traditional Scion stuff, perhaps. But Artemis was a shaper, so I had to put it in there. Orion's going to be a telepath, because I really want the Professor X thing in full gear. So the telepath gets telepathy, of course, so they can do open telepathy. They get the betrayal power, which I took right from 4th edition. So you pick one target, they have to move their speed, and then they have to make an attack against the creature. Love that power, so I'll be using that all over the place. They get the Dominate ability, so they can, the next step up of that, they can actually take over somebody's actions completely. And then, like, their level 20 ability, in addition to some other stuff, I gave them basically Cerebro. So they can mentally locate any creature with an intelligence greater than 5 on this dimension. I don't know how useful that really is at level 20. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I was just like, Professor X, here, have a Cerebro ability. The Shaper Path, of course, gets to make objects and stuff like that. And they also get to make constructs that'll fight for you. And you can augment those pretty ridiculously if you want to spend all your power points on one construct for one fight. It can be really good. Yeah, so cool stuff. You get at level 2 you get the Overchannel ability. So once per, it recharges upon a short rest, but so it's like an encounter basically. But when you use a psionic ability, a psion power, you can use the Overchannel with it. And so when you use Overchannel, you get to roll a number of d6s. And this can be any number you want, but it has to be at least 1. So you could roll 100 at some point if you wanted. And so you roll that, and whatever the result is, you get that many power points. And you can use those temporary power points just for that power. So just a one-time thing, you can go balls to the wall with it, with these temporary power points. And these can exceed your maximum, all that, whatever. So you roll 100 d6, you're going to have a lot of temporary power points. You can go hog wild. But then you take that much damage in Psychic. You take that much Psychic damage. So, at low level, you might risk, 1, maybe 2 if you're really crazy, to really just pump out some super like you're like stressing your brain to the point where it hurts. Like, that was really thematic and cool. I really like that. Now the level 20 telepath power, or one of the perks of it, I think, is immunity to psychic damage. And first I was like, isn't that kind of OP? Because you can just overchannel, infinity. You can have as many power points as you want. Like, you wouldn't even have to roll. It's just like, I want infinite power points. But then I was like, it's one ability. It's for 1 power per short rest. Is that really that overpowered? Probably, because you can augment some abilities, ad nauseum. I don't know. This whole thing is homebrew. It might not be balanced at all. Ren has okayed it, but he knows and I knows that it might not be balanced. So it's kind of going to be a learning thing. I'm not going to. Well, I might do something crazy overpowered. Let's be honest. But I'm not going to seek it out. I'm just going to, again, because I'm not playing a crazy, suicidal, let's fuck everything up character. I'm trying to play a real serious character. So I'm not going to go out of my way to discover some broken combo. So yeah, that's that. So I don't know how Orion is going to be introduced. We're going to see. But yeah, I'm going to play him. I'm going to play him, as far as Artemis, I'm going to play him that intelligently. He's going to try to survive. He's going to do things logically. All that kind of fun stuff that I enjoy from time to time. But then he's going to be a little different from both versions of Artemis. He's not going to be the criminal, lust for money Artemis, but he's also not going to be the godly Artemis. He's going to be good. I think I have him written down as like neutral good. But he's also 15. He has the intelligence, and well, yeah, he also has an 18 wisdom, but I don't know if I'll roleplay it as him having an 18 wisdom. That's just a mechanical thing. He's still going to be kind of a kid, Is he how much really is he going to go out of his way to help people? Artemis as a god is just like, oh, there's a entire town full of sick people. Let's get in there and clear things up. Orion, I'm not sure. Again, he's not going to be evil. He's not going to do evil things, but I'm not sure how far on the good scale he is. Is he really going to go out of his way just to help people? Again, he's not... His goal isn't help people. His goal is find answers. So it's going to be a bit more of a nuanced character than Schmendrick, of course. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's time to buckle down with this campaign, get serious, and get some stuff done. And of course, you know, it's not just I like to accomplish things. I do have a lot of fun playing these characters because I like being intelligent from time to time. Yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to busting out these psionic abilities. It was going to kind of be a surprise for the players in the campaign, or at least some of them, because, you know, they wouldn't expect to see a scion in a 5th edition campaign. It's not in there. So it's just going to be like, you know, what is this kid? Oh, he's got to be a wizard or something. And then suddenly, you know, I'm speaking in your brains! So, yeah, whichever of them watch this video, the surprise is kind of ruined. But it'll still be a lot of fun. I expect the same kind of slightly rude treatment that Artemis got for being young. So that's always good. And then, bam, I'm speaking in your brains! So we'll see. I'm looking forward to next session, definitely. Again, Schmendrick kind of had the unfortunate existence where, yeah, I was kind of like, how do I kill this guy? I didn't expect him to live through this session. And he did not, thanks to a lucky roll from the great old wizard, Fusoya. Circle of Death. Alright, so, yeah, next session will be real interesting. I imagine, I'll probably, like, meet them in front of the temple. I'll just be, like, standing there. Just be like, this is where my answers will be found. Wait, what's a 15-year-old kid doing here? It'll be great. I'm not sure if a dungeon crawl is really how I wanted to start that character, but he'll handle things. Actually, I'm going to try and play him even smarter than Artemis, because Artemis made some dumb decisions, if you recall. He got poisoned. We had to do an emergency blood transfusion, which, to give myself some credit, that was kind of a brilliant move. Come on, not many D&D players expect to do blood transfusions. But then I also almost died from trying to, like, jump off of a cliff or something like that inside of a castle. That was dumb. I tried to take on a volcanic dragon. Yeah, he did some dumb stuff. So we'll try and... we're always trying to improve. Anyways, I think that about wraps it up for me for this week. We had another character death. Again, I'm the only one to die. So now I gotta play a serious character and wait for the others to catch up on the death count. All of them had a more interesting, well, a more noble, no, a more cinematic death. There you go. Although, the Ark of the Covenant death is pretty cinematic in itself. But anyways, my name is Mang. This has been Roll Mangging for our D&D 5th edition campaign. I'll see you fine folks next week.